Welcome back to Ruff Talk VR. Dive into your weekly dose of in-depth game reviews, exclusive developer chats, and the freshest scoop on MetaQuest and the VR universe. Today, we're in good hands with the dynamic father-son duo D-Scruffles and Stratus, ready to decode and discuss all things virtual reality.
Hey, welcome to this episode of Ruff Talk VR. Today we have one that, we were so excited for. Today we're joined with Les Stroud, a man that needs no introduction, from Survivorman, who they just recently...
The absolute original, most authentic Survivorman.
Dude,
just my opinion, but I'm just saying.
How much time did we spend eating dinner, at the kitchen? We had a nice little TV at the front there, watching some Survivorman. Yeah, absolutely. So this is a big one. But not only do we have Les Stroud on to talk about their new game, Survivorman VR, The Descent, we're also joined with Andrew Macdonald, one of the creators of the game. So This is cool. We're going to hear
special today.
Going to hear a little bit from the man himself, Les Stroud, but also a little bit on, the technical side, how this game came to be. So before we get carried away, just to get it on record, Andrew, do you mind to introduce yourself a little bit more for our listeners? I'll take it they already know who Les is.
For sure. I sometimes get mistaken for Les at the activation booths. I'm Andrew Macdonald. I'm from television. I actually worked with Les years ago once, just doing a behind the scenes thing. Where I was working at Cream Productions, we were getting into building in VR and initially 360 videos, and that led to starting to explore building volumetric stuff. And kind of what we were thinking with Survivorman was to take what we know in producing television content and seeing if you could put yourself in the show. And, it was a kind of hit on two levels in the sense that VR is a really new medium, and very hard to produce something for unless you're, a AAA title comes in and makes a VR game, which the market is still very small. So there are very few of those right now. So how do you get into a VR game that has some appeal? And we thought, well, Cream Productions had initially worked with Les in the early years doing Survivorman. And we thought, well, we could put that together as a TV show. And we called up Les. Dave Brady called up Les and said, what do you think? And Les is like, do this. So we kind of, like every studio that's making VR, we're brand new at it. And we just decided to see if we could put a TV show together as a volumetric training experience like Les's TV show.
Well, that's explaining a lot of. I've been following on IG since probably day one. I was like, I can't believe this is happening. I'm like, they're getting Les Stroud to do a VR game. This is crazy. So I've seen like in my opinion, like some over the top production. I mean, full blown. So it's no surprise that you say you come from working in television.
Yeah, you can definitely see the experience. Unless when you got that call to say, hey, let's do something in VR.
This is what we want to do, yeah.
Had you already experienced virtual reality previously, or are you just an easy sell on these things, whether it's Arctic environments, wildernesses, or VR? You're going to say yes.
No, I mean, the answering the second question first, I'm not an easy sell on anything. I can ask Andrew, I can be a curmudgeon when I want to be. Only because I want to hold the high standards. I never, ever in my life had any interest in selling out or in, doing something for a fast buck, and I had been involved in certain merchandising opportunities that as soon as they started going the cheap route, I was like, we're out. I'm done. I'm bailing on this. So no, I've never been an easy sell that way. However, what I can say is that over the years, certainly the concept of, hey, are you going to do a video game has come up hundreds of times. When I initially looked into it for sort of standard gaming, I was getting quoted budgets like, well, to make a proper game, if you want to get into that world where you're up against Call of Duty, you're going to spend $30 million out of the starting. And that was years ago. And of course, that was never going to happen. I didn't have that kind of budget or even a fraction of that. So, and then when I saw, other games being made when they were being made more on a shoestring, they looked awful. And so I'd rather not do it than have something that looks awful. So then it was really more, I think, a matter of Cream, sort of dipping their toe in the water of virtual reality, which is different, but, obviously than the playing Call of Duty with your little controllers, which I did with my son. once we get into VR, it's different. Now we're talking the headset, strapped to your head and all of that stuff. And of course, the initial beginnings were like, well, how am I going to play this and not vomit? So all of those things have been going on for years. So then Cream, and Andrew can speak more to this, but Cream's having their internal discussions, trying to figure out, how can we move forward with this? I think even subconsciously probably thinking, how can we be on the leading edge of this? And they were working with Dominic Monaghan. Did I get the name right, Andrew? Dominic Monaghan? Yeah, Dominic Monaghan, which some people may remember from Lord of the Rings. So they're working a bit with him. And yes, that's when my old buddy Dave gave me the call and said, it was kind of like one of those calls. Listen, we're kind of looking at doing this thing. We're kind of having some success with development. Man, Survivorman is perfectly placed to be, a platform for working with VR. And so from that moment, and in any event, it was David and I, even though we parted ways in terms of business connection years ago, we remain friends. Everything's always been wonderful and amicable. And so I love working with him. So it became, after years of thinking, when can we work on a new TV series together? This came up and said, well, let's do this. And that's when I'm all in, let's go. And then enter Andrew from that point on.
So sounds like a match made in heaven. They're looking to make a game. It's something that you were thinking about for a while, but
well, and amazingly, just like surviving has a lot of risks involved, getting into a newer platform and a newer area of experiences of gaming. There's an associated risk with that as well. So it's
exactly. You have to remember too, in my situation, not to come across as pretentious, but I got into everything I've done first from the love of instructing and teaching survival, first from being an adventurer. But I'm an artist, a creator, music, writing, film. So I combined the two. So now when these guys, Andrew and Dave are saying, oh, we can do this, it'll be cool, it'll be cool, it'll be cool. Okay, it'll be cool. But will it look like crap? Because if it's going to look like crap, I'm out. And so risk, it's a little scary. When Andrew's going, well, we need to start working on your avatar. What do you mean my avatar? Well, you're in the game, man. We need. Then it's like, wow, how bad is this going to look? Is it going to be glitchy? So you're right. I think risk is the right word that you gentlemen just used.
Yeah. And I love, sorry, keep going, Andrew.
Oh, I was just going to pick up on the avatar thing. So, one of the plan that we had for making maybe a successful VR project, because we know it's very hard to get the word out and sell these things, was, leveraging the celebrity. And in doing that, and as Les mentioned, we were working with Dominic Monaghan earlier on a previous Steam game. We were working on this. We sort of sold this concept of celebrity in VR, which means now it was kind of like we pitched that, not realizing how bloody complicated that's going to be, especially when you're trying to optimize a realistic looking human being on, the potato of a processor that you have on a mobile platform, battery operated GPU, and it takes a lot to create a decent looking avatar. So we actually invented and patented a process of doing a human character specifically for these scenarios. So yeah, that you can find that information through links to the game. But yeah, so we've got this really optimized, efficient way of essentially baking the video from the helmet camera performance back onto the material of the model. So now instead of having a highly detailed character in there, you've just got a lower poly character, but you've got the video of the face performing on the face. So
yeah, and I'm just going to interrupt you, Andrew, and say that, you have to think about it, guys. If it was a no-name, not that I'm a big name, but if it was a no-name, it almost doesn't really matter what the avatar looks. We suspend our disbelief and we accept the face as it is. But right now you're talking about a face that has been on, millions of television screens throughout the world. If anything, I'm certainly recognizable. The character, the one guy who the whole show is, think about it. When I was first into it, and I'd be recognized from far away. I'm like, how did that person, I don't even know what, all right. It's 44 and a half minutes of nothing but my face. I'm not even acting as another character in a movie. It's literally me. So now Andrew's task with that is to say, okay, we have to avatar that face that is already known, and that's not easy, and we, with this journey that we're still on, we will be continually perfecting it. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. We're all still in the uncanny valley with representing people in VR, especially on a headset, but we're getting, I would argue that we're really close with this particular process. So.
But I mean, for what it's worth, going into trying the game, one of my big concerns, because I knew Les was going to be in it, he's obviously going to instruct me, not going to let me die out there, although I did die 15 times the first time I played the whole game on the easiest mode, but that's another story. But my concern was, how are they going to get Les to look like Les? If it doesn't look like him, I don't care if the voice is his, it's got to look like the guy I expected to look like. So I feel you definitely did that. I just had no idea that you had to invent your own
patented technology
to pull it off. But
and how long did that take, that whole avatar process? Just the avatar itself, not speaking on the whole game.
Yeah, it's been about just over 4 years. I guess it's initial sort of concept going down the path. It was work we were doing with Sheridan College here in Toronto. And they have a facility where you can access innovation funding for applied research projects. So we kind of teamed up with the university and kind of went down this path and then chased a patent, and we got it. So,
wow, that's a long project. So 4 years. That was just for the avatar, or for the whole game?
Yeah, the game's 3. The avatar is about 4. The game is 3. But yeah, that's what I didn't realize either. Making something in this sort of pioneering realm is just how you're inventing systems and processes as you go. And it took a considerably longer time than anyone expected. But again, you read up on video games, some of them are 10 years in development. So it's a long, complex process.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, it's kind of I made special note of that, because that's rare.
Yeah, and something that's really cool about this game, and I'm not sure if this was the goal. I get the impression it was, but of course it's a video game, but it's, to me, much more of like an educational simulation. You're going to go in. Of course, there's not 100% going to be a crate right there guaranteed in that survival situation, but you're going to get an idea of the concepts of things you want to avoid. Good little habits to do.
Well, decision making.
So, played through the lens of educational simulation, the game, it hits the nail on the head. But was that's
because that's what VR is good for. That's why. And Les, I know you'll want to speak to this, and for sure it's a perfect combination working with Les on something like this. But in my experience, exploring the world of VR and going to the Oculus Connects and the conventions and what have you, some of the most profound things that I ever saw in VR were medical surgical simulators, or there was an Australian company that had a mining simulator, and I'd been underground in my filming career, and I understand whenever you go to these industrial military sites, you need to get up at 6 a.m. and show up for 3 hours of onboarding and training videos before you were even allowed down the mine, because it can kill you down there. And the first time I saw a VR experience it was simply a training module for working underground, and how everything was lit by the headlight, and had to look for things that might fall on you from the ceiling. Where's the emergency stop on this vehicle? It's that indelible volumetric experience of learning that I think is the most powerful use of VR. And I thought, when we were working with Les, it's a perfect combination, because that's what he does in his show.
Yeah, I think that, in fact, in the beginning, in early conversations with Andrew and also with Irene, one of the producers, I said, can we even remove the word game? Because game really does it a disservice. We say game so everybody understands VR game, but in fact, the analogy that I kept going with, because it works so perfect, is helicopter pilots have had flying simulators for 15, 20 years. That was the thing. And so to me, that's what we were doing. We weren't making a game. Call of Duty is a game. There are lots of games. This is a simulator. In fact, in many ways, we really should drop the word game from all marketing and just call it a VR simulator.
Well, except in the Oculus store, because with the game qualification, we get a little bit more exposure. So we're
okay. And that's where I have to, I have to bow to the business of the marketing and blah, blah, blah. But
we don't have that. We want that in the store. We want it to be classified as a game just to get more banner ads, really.
I'm just saying that, my attention to the truth of it all is that it's a simulator. And, and look, there, if you crash a helicopter in a helicopter simulation, you don't really crash and you're not really hurt, and you just press start again and start all over again. It's the same thing here. You're not really, burning your hands trying to light a fire or freezing to death. You just press start, you just go back again. But the concept, the idea is still, it's bringing you into the world of flying a helicopter. It's bringing you into the world of survival, where your mind will start to go, like someone asked me recently, well, what's one of the things you could do to prepare for, get ready for playing this game, doing this simulation? And one of the things I said was, actually, you could go out and take a weekend course in survival, and then bring it back to the simulation, because now so many things, even in the simulation, will make more sense now. And I know we're going to get into this, but in the creation of it, that's where I had kind of the most fun, because I could hold Andrew's feet to the fire and say, no, that would never happen. End of story. And, to Andrew and everybody's credit, there was no argument. Andrew didn't battle with me, are you sure, Les, that's how you light a fire? And and if I said you'd never do that, he would just go, oh, okay, we need to redesign this process. And so in that mode, you are dealing with the truth and the reality of wilderness survival as Les Stroud, sees it.
Yeah, we're on the same page on that. Like, I truly want to make something that's useful, as you do too, that could impart that information. I think that the key problems we had was like looking at how to make something realistic, but then again, it's still got to be like baby toys, because it's in VR. Like, it's still, you don't have that fine dexterity and that complexity that with the puzzlers, you really it's like smashing baby toys together, like square peg and round hole. But we had to kind of wrap that around. Here's some practical information. So it was that fine blend. A good example, Les, was the, rappelling down a rope. Yeah. So like rappelling down a rope, and, it's really easy to get like, a player rig that's got a prefab thing that you can just go hand over hand down a rope, and VR, many games have it. Physically impossible. Like, you cannot go down a rope like this with your body weight. So Les was very insistent that no, we tackle this in a realistic way. And we looked at what, and the constraints are, what are the materials you have in the game based on this area, which is the TV show that he did. So we had to kind of put our heads together and then create a sort of a way to explain how you could do this with prusik knots, but at the same time, we can't tie a knot in VR. So it's like getting that fine-tuned blend between here's like how this is done and simulating you doing it without making it impossible to do.
Which I greatly actually appreciated, because to me that added more authenticity to, even if it can't function like it would in the wild, we'll say, but conceptually it's like your eyes are seeing what it should look like.
And kind of on this, how did these survival situations, come to be in the game? Were they based off of, previous episodes of the show? Was it your idea, Les's?
Yes to all of the above. It was based on things on the show. Andrew would come up with stuff that he'd like to do. I would, either rein him in or suggest other things. A good example would be snaring for rabbits in the Arctic, which is possible to do. But no offense to Andrew, the initial concept was way off the reality of how you would do that. And then I started bringing in the thing. Look, you can snare Arctic hare in the Arctic. You absolutely can do it. By the way, Arctic hare, not rabbits. But you're going to have to build a rock wall. You're going to have to make a funnel. You can't just put a snare out in the middle of the open and a hare's going to jump through it. And so this was our back and forth thing, and again, no offense to Andrew or anybody else on that side of the team, but they'd never slept on the ground in the Arctic and tried to snare Arctic hares, snowshoe hares. So that was our back and forth thing.
For sure, all of the concepts in the game came from me watching hours and hours of his show. Like, I was fishing through most of these episodes trying to figure out what would work in this episode. So that all really came out of the TV show.
Yeah, except for the inside the glacier thing, Andrew.
That's our bonus content that we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, every once in a while I have to. I'll go because Andrew be like, well, it's be a lot of fun. Like really kayaking down in a canoe using a kayak paddle, which is possible. Going down the river in the okay. I'll let a couple of things slip by for the speed of the game and the fun of it. I'm not that much of an earnest curmudgeon. So long as it fits in somewhere. Like, could you find yourself in a canoe going down a set of rapids? Yeah, you could. Okay, let's have some fun with it, sort of thing. But on the other hand, if you're going to show how to snare an Arctic hare, I want that to be done correctly and perfectly. Which then leads to the next problem, but we don't have fingers to use. So it's like, okay, how do you tie a snare when it's only VR? And these are definitely the conversations we've had over the past, as Andrew says now, 4 years.
Well, the authenticity to me, I mean, and I'll stop using the word game because I don't believe it's classified as a game in genre on the Oculus store either. Adventure exploration, I believe.
Yeah.
Or something to that effect. But I took it more as an educational experience. It was like, even though it's VR and I know, I'm sitting in my living room playing it, it's like I made mistakes, and I made mistakes that I believe in a real survival situation I probably would have made. And I'm trying to be careful with my words because I don't want to spoil any of but I would just say like certain things, like I'm going to go to a certain objective because I can see it and it's there, but not pre-thinking like maybe I should do something before I try to make it from here to there. And then I'm not lying. I did it like 4 or 5 times, each with a different mindset, and died every time going up until I finally learned that there's something that I should be doing before just beelining to what seems like the obvious. And as far as like kayaking and sledding, I appreciated that for the fun factor, but anyways.
Yeah, no, you're right on the money. And kudos to Andrew in development of certain parts of the game. For example, how do you simulate being cold or being without food energy? You can't. So somewhere along the lines, they came up with the concept of having a wristwatch kind of scenario, a monitor that you can look at that tells you, okay, you are getting too cold because how long you're taking right now is making you too cold. And those are the little, sneak things in there. It's like, oh, I can't just hang out on half naked on the top of a mountain in the biting wind and be fine. No, you can't. You're about to die because you didn't do what? You didn't do the right survival things to get you to the next step. So you're not making snowshoes if you're if you're freezing to death. But again, Andrew and them had to come up with something because you can't feel it. You're playing a game. You're doing a simulator. And I thought that was pretty cool. But again, that represents one of the parts of using virtual reality and putting on the headset that I would just accept and go, okay, I get it. Yeah, that's a compromise we definitely need to make for the sake of continuing on with the simulation.
Yeah, it might be a little hard if there's no watch and then suddenly, the frost appears on your screen and you're like, oh man, I didn't know I was cold. So yeah, at certain points you do need to compromise. But like you said, there's no suspension of belief. Like you see that and it just works in the game. Natural. It makes sense. I love how the easy mode is 4,000 calories. And it shows you how hard it is to survive in real life. That 2,000 calories.
That watch became my friend.
Yeah, very very quickly too. So do you have without giving too many spoilers, we might have to in this question, but did you have a favorite survival situation to work on in this game, Les?
Oh yeah. Well, favorite. I think the fire starting. I mean, it will always be one of the more, bad word user, but funner parts of survival. And we had opportunities for lighting fires a couple of ways in this game, and I thought that was pretty cool. But I don't know, Andrew, you got really in the thick of the weeds in creating some of these. What would be your favorite survival skill that we agreed upon together that you ended up developing?
I don't know. I think the most useful practice too. Actually, it's a funny story. One, there's how the game gets reviewed by people. They make their videos and their talk through videos, and it's brutal in this gaming industry. You get a lot of people that just pan stuff all the time. You know what it's like? But I had this guy who was kind of panning it for the quality of graphics. I mean, it's not a PC game; it's a VR game, but quality of graphics and such. And then as he started playing it, he discovered that you could take lip balm and it's wax and put it on paper, and then that paper will burn better. And he's talking about that, going like, "Oh, I didn't know that. That's kind of cool." And then, so to hear him learn these things as he's playing the game was quite rewarding, even as he was panning it. So for me, I think the first level really are the two key ones. Like lip balm on paper is definitely going to help you get a fire going, because the whole concept, the very first prototype was about that. Like most video games, you put the log there and you go boom, and the fire lights, and you play the video game and fight the dwarves, right? But in our case, like if you've ever been actually out in damp conditions and not ideal with limited material to get a fire going, it's bloody hard to get a fire going. Like so we were trying to convey that. So, yeah, those fire starting techniques like lip balm on the paper. And the other one that I quite enjoy is showing people how to make charred cloth, which if you know survival training and stuff, like a piece of charred cloth is really valuable to get a fire going.
Yeah, and that was actually also one of the ones, Andrew, if you recall, like Andrew had it set up, I think 3 or 4 different ways. And every time I'm like, nope, that's not how you do it. You've got to see this. You have to have that. You can't just go from that to that. In other words, there would be times where Andrew would make the leap and then, and I would say you just missed 2 steps. And if you don't include those 2 steps, you can't make the leap. And so I would just keep coming back. Now that I think of it, Andrew, we should have gone out in the backyard and actually had you do the charred cloth for real. And we wouldn't have had to have those conversations. Why didn't we do that? Because you're in Toronto and I'm all over the world.
I was actually curious what Andrew's actual survival skills in the wild are, if any.
Well, he's a good adventurer. You're an adventurer. You do lots of shit.
Yeah, I spent the early part of my career filming all over the world, like, in the developing world, in disaster zones. And so I've filmed actually Canadian Sartex flying over the Arctic in Griffin helicopters. So, I've actually got some experience. So actually being stupid enough to park myself in the middle of nowhere with no sewage for a week, I have not done that.
Oh, well, week
we can't probably can't give up the concept of what we're doing next with this. So I won't do that. But perhaps the next one we're talking about, Andrew, you'll be quite amenable to saying, okay, I'll go there.
You're going to drop me in a place with nothing for a week. And if I make it through, I can make the game.
A much more forgiving place, as you know.
That would have been a good way for you to say yes or no to the game. Like, look, I'll do the game. I'll let you make the game with the Survivorman name. But
here's a camera and get walking.
You need to make one episode just yourself. Exactly. Let's see it. Let's see that you can do it.
Walk in my shoes for a little bit there.
Yeah, you could even FaceTime occasionally. Like, this is how it's going to work in the game.
Oh, yeah. But guys, in these situations, creatively speaking, just a tangent a little bit. This has always been my way. I'm often the thorn in the side of networks. I'm often the asshole in the room, because, when we get into a situation and we all agree and we're going to go down a certain road and then everybody starts compromising and chickening out and weaseling out, I'm always the guy going, well, wait a minute. No, we said we were doing it this way. We should do it this way. This is still the best way. And I'm always in that position. And I was in that position for working on this VR. I knew that for Andrew and Irene and everybody else involved, that I would be the one going, no, guys, no. And the thing is, when I say no to Andrew, I realize that I've just said no to something he just spent 8 weeks on and now has to reverse it and spend maybe another 4 months on because I said, no, you can't do it. And not like, no, I didn't put out, say you can't. It was more, no, that doesn't happen. And so it's a real, it's tricky. It's tricky to not.
Yeah, but I think we did okay because, we're both after the same goal. And I, if it had been a scenario where there was something completely unreasonable that you had said no to, that would have been probably really frustrating. But there wasn't anything like that. It was just, I also want the authenticity because I also know what it's like now that you've got a game out in the wild. You're just going to get criticism from people. So, as long as you can back up what you did, which is what I think both Les and I wanted to be, is in a position where we can back up what we said and what we did.
Well, you know what? And to your point, so to Andrew's point, a couple of situations. First of all, we already know about me and dealing with the specifics of the survival. about the challenge of trying to, how do you tie, you can't tie rope. Yeah, I know, Andrew, we can't tie rope, but we can't go down a cliff like that. So we got to figure out a way. But remember we would also then, with the rope tying, I said, let's get, an actual climber expert to chime in, even though both Andrew and I have done rock climbing. But Andrew, why don't you tell them the story of the compass on the dash?
I got something. I got a prop.
Prop time. I don't even know. Hey guys, are people only going to be hearing me, or can they see me right now?
They'll be able to see you.
Yep.
Good thing I'm clothed.
Okay, so
go ahead.
The story of here's the story of the compass. So, I wanted to have, that initial scavenging session at level 1 where you get all the material you need for the survival, is to get a compass to help you with the second level where you need to navigate with a compass. And I thought, what is a compass? Well, an aircraft will have a compass. So in the initial build of the helicopter, we stuck, a directional sort of aviation compass in the dash of the helicopter that you remove with the screwdriver and pull out of the dash. And we had a little airplane symbol on it. Now, what happened was, as soon as we had that sort of commercial up for the game, people who are pilots and aviation experts were jumping on that right away and saying, what you've got there is a directional heading indicator, which is a complex gyroscopically enabled compass that you can set a point on and fly to, but needs power to run. Without power, it doesn't do anything. So to pull that out of a dead helicopter and think it can be used as a compass is an impossibility. So we were immediately criticized on that, and also where it was mounted, the dash of the helicopter. So when we went to film the first teaser commercial, which was less in front of a crashed Cessna, we got an opportunity to shoot at a volumetric stage with our mountain background on the TVs behind Les and do that little initial commercial. I talked to the fellow that we found that could bring a crashed airplane in for us to shoot, and they said, "Listen, you don't happen to have just a magnetic compass that would have the airplane symbol on it, do you?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, they make those. Yeah, I'll bring one in when I come back on Tuesday." And sure enough, he brings it in, and there it is. So there is an aviation compass that works as a magnet. It has 2 wires on it, but that's just for a light. It just works by itself. And the only other issue was we had ours mounted in the dash. These, which are found in both helicopters and airplanes, are most commonly, in fact, all the time, they're mounted on top of the dash, right in the center. It's like your analog point of reference for direction in case everything else failed. It's on the dash. So I made a video with this just to back up that this does exist with an airplane on it. And we moved it in the model in the game to being on top of the dash. So we went those extra steps just to be accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, I'll point it back to the authenticity of what you're trying to get. So yeah, if someone's going to call you out and be like, that would never happen, then it would never happen. But if now you can prove, well, it can happen. And I mean, even going as far as putting it in the right location. Mm-hmm. I want to jump a question though, because you got me, and you don't have to answer. You can be vague or tell me to F off. I'm cool with that. But to me, this seemed like the start of what could be many different, we'll say experiences and adventures and learning opportunities for different scenarios. And this one obviously involves, a very freaking cold mountain and glaciers and even some nice scenery. If you're so lucky to get that far, is this just the start of a bigger picture for your studio as well as Les to continue pumping out different scenarios?
100%. Yeah, we would. That's the whole point. Like it's an episodic opportunity here. I think Les agrees.
Oh, I'm in for pound, in for penny, in for penny, in for pound. If we are so lucky as to get that nod and to move into version 2, the way I work in life, if it's that worthwhile, I mean, let's get to version 20.
Well, especially as the technology continues to develop, you reference with the not, you're limited to the controllers. There's hand tracking, but it's not good enough yet to be able to do, those type of applications. But the emphasis there is yet. So if these experiences keep coming out, maybe in 5 years, we will be able to put the controllers down and just use our hands for all the survival stuff. But you're building the early foundation now. So that's definitely the answer I wanted to hear.
Yep.
And absolutely, even like where VR is at today compared to when you make these games, which do take a long time. You start 3 years ago to what the technology is then. And it's difficult to try and, the classic thing is like, you're building a game and you decide to update your game engine and break everything. You know what I mean? So there's that fine balance between trying to keep up with what the latest is, but not breaking everything because you started 3 years ago, so and for sure now with even, I can't remember what it's called, Disassembly Required, which is an amazing game. And I think the hand dexterity of that translating to a VR experience in the future definitely could be coming where you could thread the needle. So.
Yeah. And it's pretty easy to think of where we can go with this: jungles, deserts, mountains, tropical forests, natural disasters,
societal breakdown,
societal breakdown. Exactly.
It's terrifying.
Because that's, but that's all stuff that I do and all stuff that I teach. And so, we've got, and the thing is, now you think about it, societal breakdown is like the theme of 1 million games. We'd be the one VR experience simulator who'd actually be doing it with me going, no, this is what you would really do. And so, we may need it soon. So,
Well, I believe being prepared is not a bad thing, and being prepared for even if you can't, and that's what the beauty of I think these experiences are going to be, is it's one thing to watch it, it's another thing to be part of it, and it's another thing to take away a piece of it. Because, and I'm not saying I would make it out of that survival situation I went through, but if I was in it today and those same resources were available, I feel like I have a much better chance of surviving than I would have had I just been, dropped into a.
Well, even if it's not that exact situation, it might just be one sentence that could save your life too.
Yes,
you might be in a cold environment one day, start exerting, and go, "Oh no, I remember Les Stroud in Survivorman VR said, don't sweat in these situations. You're going to die of hypothermia."
And that's going to be the last thing you're going to hear is the little taunt you get when you die of Les saying how maybe hypothermia is the way to go.
Oh, I love the shit talk to your ear every time.
Yeah, and we're very PG not PG. We're very, appropriate. I mean, we should do a version of the game where I can just go with potty mouth through the whole game. You asshole! Why would you do that? Okay, you're dead. Get out of here.
Didn't you listen to what I said? Why did you do that?
Loser. You deserve to die.
It's funny though. There is an appeal to getting yelled at when you see it in VR. At least you see like Trover Saves the Universe and some of those other like Simply Accounting ones where you're kind of abused and yelled at for doing dumb stuff. I don't know what it is, but people kind of enjoy it.
It's a nice little like comedic break. You're just like,
this is the last thing I'm hearing.
Yeah. As I'm getting buried in snow and I'm dead.
I'm dead.
Frost closes in on your eyes.
So you mentioned that, you're worldwide, he's over in Canada. It's not always the easiest to get person to person to work on something like this. So how are they having you test it? Were they sending you builds and then you load it onto your headset? How did this whole process go down?
No, it was more me going to Toronto more than anything else. Yeah. And to be honest, total full disclosure, I did not spend a lot of time in the game, like playing the game, doing the simulation, because in that's not my world.
It was video playthroughs.
Well,
that's playthroughs. Yeah.
And that's not my world anyway. Other than having played Call of Duty with my son, so that's where I trusted Andrew and the team. These guys, and really the better thing than rather than me putting the headset on and then criticizing, you need people who wear the headsets all the time, who are doing all sorts of other simulations and stuff. Then they can go on and so for that sort of the playthrough. I wasn't as involved as much because I didn't want to be. I wanted to be involved with truth of everything that was going down and the reality of that. But Andrew doesn't need me saying, well, shouldn't you be able to use your right thumb to click over that? He doesn't need me for that. So
no, we had QA for that.
Right.
Well, I love that everybody had a role, but you all respected each other and you all said, look, if Les is saying this doesn't work, it doesn't work. And on the other side, you're saying, look, if Andrew's saying that this is the fun way to do it, it's the fun way to do it. So I think having that.
the cool thing was it was kind of like I come from television, Les comes from television, and we kind of worked on it in a television capacity because what the game was a giant sandbox to make the television show. And that's what I would be doing is like filming, here's what we're doing and here's how it's happening, and send these cuts to Les, who would watch it as a show and give feedback on it that way. So that's kind of the other cool thing you can do with the game is you can kind of shoot your own Survivorman episode.
Yeah, like for example, Andrew would play the game and film it and send that to, and I'd watch a 25-minute or 40-minute, which was, by the way, was really hard to do because then you're like trying not to vomit because you see him moving around, right? But I trusted them to get that part right. I focused on the details and the information. And that's what I focused on. And I would often say, like, is there no way you can break through the snow and make it look more? And, the bottom line is they're going to do the best they can with the budget we have. And if Andrew says, we can't make that snow look any more realistic, there's no point in me going, well, I'm out. That has got to look more realistic. That's his world. But I can say, but snow would never fall like that. And he'd go, okay, well, we need to fix that. So yeah, that's kind of how we did it together.
Well, and I don't want to overlook the sound score for the game as well, or the experience, because it's when you take that step in the snow and you hear that, that's cold snow. That's not,
I especially look for squeaky snow. Snow has so many different sounds. People don't realize that. Like the colder it is, the more different it sounds. And when it's, I don't know, back me up, Les, but it's about -22 or colder, and we're Celsius here, it starts to get a squeak to it that just
like styrofoam. Yeah, it's an awful analogy, but comparison, but like styrofoam. When I was learning how to build igloos in the Arctic, that's legitimately what the Inuit elder said to me. You want to cut into it, and it should feel like you're cutting into styrofoam. Okay, So yeah, and since you're talking about the soundtrack, plug for my own self here is that one of the beautiful things, and Andrew, on the next game, I just want to do it all, but I was able to do my music with this as well. So we've got my music all over this thing. And I love that because, that's a part of my own creativity that has always had to take a back seat in my world of being Survivorman and filmmaking. Yet it's always been there. I wrote all my theme songs, did lots of background music. So with this game, same sort of thing. So that's been a fun part too.
I full selfishness, I was hoping to stumble upon a harmonica so I could play the harmonica.
It's coming.
Yeah.
That's the other.
Yeah, we do have to do that.
It's like if I'm surviving with Les there, I want some of his toys.
Didn't I do a harp thing?
Yeah. There's more.
You just didn't use it.
That's the thing with the. Well, no, it's in the thing with these. It's not like of what I'm learning. It's not like the world of film where you make a TV show or a film and you release it and that's it. It's cut, done, runs in the theater, goes on TV, and it goes. Whereas in this gaming world, it's long tail. Like if you look at all the games, they just slowly sell more and more over years. And what they also do is like update them. So we actually have several pieces that we're updating the game with in the very near future. Like and
that's right.
Sound mix.
That's right. I forgot. I did blow harp, didn't I?
Yeah, we have a performance. There's going to be some Easter eggs in some updates coming up. So,
oh yeah, and to speak to that, that's the other fun thing. I'm a big Marvel fan. I just finished watching Loki last night. So I'm a big fan of what. And then Andrew suggested it early, I think, just by chance, Easter eggs. What can we slip into the game that's kind of like, unless you go to that end of the field, you'll never see it. So we, without giving up you can. It's an Easter egg, so I can't tell you, but I can tell you that we have dropped, the odd Easter egg in there just for comic relief. And you go, oh, did you see that? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? No, I never saw that. Oh, yeah. No, you got to go to the right and drop down the cliff, and then it's there. So, yeah, some cool shit like that is fun.
Well, I definitely saw something which I will not disclose to anybody. Maybe
there we go.
Everybody sees it. Maybe everybody doesn't, but it was pretty freaking cool. It was definitely cool.
Yeah, when I was telling my friends that, there's a Survivorman VR game, that was the type of stuff they were asking me, is there going to be a harp in it anywhere? One was even like, can we see Bigfoot anywhere in the distance? We're getting all the call outs to the
I think you know what, Andrew, I think we need to keep that as as actually part of our checklist conversation. Like, okay, what Easter eggs are in this? That's become such a big thing in this, in the world. Like I said, I'll watch Marvel, then I'll go on New Rock Stars or the Canadian Lad, and I'll watch breakdowns of the Marvel that I just watched to go right in and say, whoa, you find out that way in the back corner, they had some print on a clock somewhere. It's like, oh my God, that's a reference to Iron Man. Oh my God. Right. So we have the chance to do this here. I actually do it sometimes in my documentary work now, just because it's a fun part of creativity and filmmaking and VR making.
That's huge. I agree. Easter eggs they're great.
Especially when you organically find them. It's awesome.
Well, it's one of those things. If you don't know what it means, it's just going to go right over your head. Just looks like another object in the game. But for the people that know, I mean, that can make their whole play session in that day. Like, I can't believe I just saw that. And then somebody hears it. Then they go into that level just to see it. Somebody makes a video about it. So I agree that the Easter eggs are huge, and you have a great opportunity with it for sure.
For sure. And like film and TV, you always shoot 90% more than you use. We have lots of less performances. So
that's awesome. And one thing that we actually skipped over, you've mentioned some different names throughout the episode, like Irene and stuff like that. How big was the whole team that worked on this?
It was pretty small. It was a pretty small team. I mean, again, we're working with minuscule budget, and that's the thing about working in this VR world. It's sort of a pioneering world that doesn't have major investments right now. I mean, AAAs are coming out with games, but I believe they're still loss leaders just because it's still a growing market. So it's always a very small budget. So our team we were working with a company called Occupied here in Toronto, who had one point the most about 4 people working on the game, and we have internal supervising developer at our side. So I think you can see in the credit roll, you count everybody, lots of accountings and things like that. But I think the core team that was building the game was in the 6 or 7 range.
I mean, you brought up AAA games a couple of times, and there have been, for the standalone headsets, a couple of studios who have come in from AAA status, and they've tanked because
they don't put the right.
What you do in flat screen for your AAA game means nothing in VR, so you're not getting that.
And it didn't have
a pass.
Didn't have that love feel. Like, it didn't look like that there was the attention to small detail. Like a project like this, you guys are spending so much time making sure the authenticity is there. You don't have to have the budget of a AAA studio, as long as you're putting in the love and the passion and the time into it, versus a AAA studio that maybe throws a big budget but not the actual effort into it. It doesn't make that as good of a.
We've talked to probably over 100 developers, and the best studios are the smallest ones.
Yeah, typically under 10. We see a lot.
Yeah.
So that's very impressive, though, the work put out for that studio size. Again, I think it's important for people to know what this is. It's an educational survival simulation. You're going to learn a lot. It's not going to be like a game with high scores and leaderboards and online play or anything like
coming.
that.
That's coming, though. That's coming. There's the first update we're pushing. And I want to mention, speaking of update, we have a publishing deal with Sony as well. So the game should be coming out this is officially announced, so we can say this, but it should be coming out in February of 2024 for Sony PSVR. And in the process of doing that, we're, because it's a console gaming platform, we are elevating that photorealistic world that we, had to run and optimize on a Quest, but bringing that quality up. And some of the work that I'm seeing coming out of the team that's doing that is stunning. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Ooh,
that's really good news. It's just more people that are going to get to experience it. So that's definitely a home run.
And currently, correct me if I'm wrong, the game's on the Quest platform, but it is also available on PC VR and Steam, correct?
No, only on the Quest platform right now. We're saving our PC VR Steam launch to coincide with our PSVR launch.
Understood.
So then we can kind of maximize the marketing of that. And all at the same time, the game is going to have a major update. So we're going to have these Easter eggs that we're speaking of, some potentially an extra level in the game. So yeah, and it's kind of right now what we're doing is getting feedback from people playing it and getting that extra level of QA out of it, I guess, right now.
Damn,
that's a fast update for something that just came out literally just over a week ago.
And playing
weeks ago,
I didn't get the feel of like it needs more so the fact that there's more
I took it as episode completion. I survived. I made it. Mission accomplished. What can I take into what would happen tomorrow if for some reason I was...
Yeah, so knowing there's even more content and updates coming, that's huge for the game.
I'm so glad you guys had such a good experience. I'm too close to it as a developer, but for, it's so complex and there are so many things all the time that are like, oh, we got to fix that. We got to fix this. So to me, when I play it, I'm still like, oh, we have to get that fixed in the game kind of thing. So yeah, it's an ongoing, evolving thing.
Well, and I will totally admit one of the reasons I was really attached to this is because historically my understanding of Les is he doesn't do shoddy shit, and it's, he's not going to fall for stunts, and let's just do it for the sake of making it look good on television. So I'm like, how are they going to get Les's stamp of approval on this and make a good experience? That, again, if you can take one thing from, and this to me is now that I know there's, we'll say to episode 20, whatever, if I can take one thing from each one of these, it puts me in a much better standing of an unfortunate situation and I might find myself in.
And that's also when you realize that surviving in the wilderness is one giant puzzle game. There's a lot of moments in this game that's almost like a puzzle game. You got to figure out what's going on, but the consequences of getting it wrong is
death.
Yeah, it's pretty
there's
severe.
There's no fine line there. Yeah. Unless you're going to incorporate broken bones and sprains and twisted ankles, which certainly could happen, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I do have a Les question, and I want to jump it kind of not off game, but because this dealt with a very cold environment, which I'm sure everyone mutually agreed upon, and I know for a fact you've survived in these environments as well as every other environment I think Mother Earth has in front of us. Desert, or we'll say a glacier, which is worse to survive on?
Oh, that's easy. The answer to the question lies in the fact that it's never going to be about location, ever. You could put me in the nicest location on the planet versus a real rough location, and all I want to know is what's the temperature going to be. Cold is harder. End of story. Cold will always be harder. When it's cold, you can't stop. It's constant movement. It's constant fear of becoming too cold and hypothermia and so on. So for me, again, it doesn't matter the geographical location. It doesn't matter the ecosystem. I need to know how cold is it going to be. And once it starts tipping the magic number of freezing, 32 Fahrenheit, 0 Celsius, the minute it dips below that, you're in trouble. So it will always be cold for me. Always. That's the hardest. Absolutely. So the answer to your question is I'll take the desert.
Take the desert. Oh, okay. I was trying to weigh out the pros and cons of each in my head and I'm like, shit, I really don't know which one. One obviously has easy access to water, but.
Well, remember too, though, that what we're discussing here is survival. You have to make that qualification. It's not, people say, oh man, I hang out in the snow and then we snow ski and snow shit. Yeah. And you're eating food and you're dressed warmly and you're going to, no, we're talking about survival. So if remember, framing the question is what is easier for survival wherever it's not cold?
Fair enough.
That makes it very appropriate that this was the first one then, get the hardest out of the way.
The worst case scenario of worst case scenarios. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to say there's a funny side story. One of the main appeals to doing an Arctic scenario for me was that I didn't have to render trees and foliage and vegetation and plants for this first try at a VR game. It was an easier graphical game.
And it sounds
just
like
about the tree line.
I'm guessing you were pretty sold on the Arctic, environment as well when you heard that part too, right? Last were you like, let's go, this is a challenge, let's do it?
No, I was actually honestly not happy with starting with the Arctic. I was really, but I was in a situation where David Brady and Irene and Andrew, they were all very excited, new relationship, let's go. And I just didn't want to get in their way. I'm just like, you know what? That's where Andrew's going with all this. He's stoked on that. I'm not. And so I don't want to throw water on that. But I would have been more likely to start with a temperate forest. So I would have been more likely to start with, and go that route.
That's interesting because it's easier it's easy. You're saying cold is the hardest. So it's what we started with was the hardest survival scenario, but on our side, it was the baby steps of the easiest visually build for a video game.
Yeah. Whereas on a survival method, falling out of a helicopter at the top of a mountain is not, baby steps on survival. It's basically as tough as it gets. So we legitimately started with like one of the hardest things that could ever happen to a human being. So we'll probably swing the pendulum for the next one.
So what would have been the reason that you would have wanted to start with a more temperate environment like a forest? Just because of like more simple survival skills, or is that just something that you love?
No, I think, as you just said, it's more about simple survival skills, baby steps, go learn the process sort of thing. Walk before you can run.
Understood.
Well, and I would
and the cold will always represent the pinnacle of surviving. So
yeah, not too much population, in the cold. So
no, less to me. Like really less. And you're blessed in this experience because there are things that you can use but I mean, full reality, you could find yourself on a glacier with none of that,
well, true. If you think about it as well, in terms of the chronology and how this sort of, even with Survivorman itself, what was the first show that I ever did? It was in Northern Ontario, Canada, where I'm from. It was with basically no supplies, so it's pure wilderness. Okay, but then what I did with Andrew, top of a mountain, helicopter crash, items you can use, that's basically like Survivorman season 6. That's like, okay, now we're gonna, we're gonna pull in all these other things, aspects of survival. But when I first started, it was a trajectory of, now let me show you how to build this kind of shelter. Now let me show you how to do a fire this way. Wilderness. Oh, you know what? I should include something like a smashed up camera. What could you do with this? Baby step. Instead, Andrew had us crashing in a helicopter on the top of an Arctic mountain. So it is what it is. It's fantastic. It's still not sensationalized. It's still, any survival instructor who really knows their, worth their salt sort of thing could look at this simulation and go, okay, yeah, okay, yep. That I'm confident that would be the reaction.
Well, it sounds like the goal was make a realistic survival, simulation, keep it fun. Again, emphasis on realistic, make a good looking less, realistic looking less at the very least.
Which is good looking, of course.
Yeah, hey, but I'd say that's mission accomplished. Going into it, again, if you view the experience through that lens, it's 2 thumbs up from me in that regard. I think if somebody goes in and you keep using the example, Call of Duty, yeah, if you expect a Call of Duty type game, you're going to go, what was that? But if you go in, it's educational, it's simulation, you're going to have a great time. And like you said, even if it's just one thing per episode, that
yeah, I went into it wanting to learn something. I knew kind of what the base of the experience was going to be, but I was like, let me see if I can learn something. And even more was learning something about myself, as I had said earlier, like making decisions that, were just done on sight, not done on thought and preparing to do what I needed to do.
I think they even have less say that in the start when in the first level, like before you do stuff, stop and analyze your environment, your surroundings. Plan your next move.
What is less know? It's like, it's just weird to know, like I definitely learned something. So again, if I'm in that scenario tomorrow, I know just because it might look shiny in the distance, I need to not just go running out there.
We haven't talked about this, but I know you did the same thing I did, which is you go to run up a hill. They say, stop, you're going to die.
The snow is way too deep for this.
You're going to die. And then I was like, I'll slow down a little.
I'll just go slower.
So, nope, that's not.
Why am I still burning calories?
Yeah. So,
and then you can't get back to your fire to get warm. So you're toast.
Well, jokes aside, I think that the simulation captured that feeling of like, when you realize it's too late, You're doomed. Like there's when you go, oh my God, I can't make it up to the top of this hill. And then you turn around and look and you see the camp all the way over there. You're like, I'm not making it back to the camp either. And unfortunately,
get that little bit of
what would happen in real. That's what would happen in real life too.
There's
so
no way around it.
So I think that the team did a great job, accomplishing what it was set out to do. But before we let these two go, because I know you've been extremely excited for this one. Is there anything else you wanted to ask Andrew or Les over here?
I could ask Andrew and Les questions for the next 8 hours, but I'm not going to dare do that. No, I am absolutely couldn't be happier with what I got to experience. And I'm even happier to hear confirmation that this is really just the beginning of something much bigger. Because I believe for especially people who want to know something about survival, it gives them an opportunity. Not everyone can go to classes, or, you know, you're stuck at the mercy of, but this is more hands-on if you're stuck in an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have one question for Les, and then I'll lay off and I'll be good for at least a year. When you find yourself and I'm not talking you because you are a professional at survival, but what advice would you give someone if they find themselves into an unfortunate survival scenario, for the psychology behind it, to keep the mind willing to push forward and willing to try? Because I've heard if your mindset is not into surviving, it's just going to be days before you'll be nothing.
Well, you have to assist yourself, because we can get into really deep psychology here. And if you're already insecure, or you are a struggling individual emotionally or intellectually or whatever, and you find yourself in that situation, you got to give yourself all the advantages. And the only real way to do that right from the get-go is to stop and calm down. So that's the first one, like take a knee. And so you stop and breathe and calm down, because the thing is, you can't rush forward without knowing why you're rushing forward. And you can't just sit still and do nothing, because it's survival. So one way or the other, you need to be proactive. How do you do that? And I can't remember if we put this into this game or not, but we will in the future if we didn't. And what I have is what's called the zones of assessment. And this little practice...
We did.
Enables the individual to move forward without that crippling fear and panic. So calm down. Now, 3 zones of assessment. You need information to make a decision. Without information, you can't make a decision. You can't make a decision, you can't do proactive survival, which I'm a strong, I believe in very much. So first thing is, okay, what do you got? That's it. We need a zone of assessment. What do you got? First zone, immediate body. Okay, I got a snapped ankle. I've got power bars in my pocket and a lighter and a heavy jacket. Okay. Zone of assessment number 2. Oh, well, I don't have the canoe. That's gone. I got, paddles are broken and the canoe's gone downstream. But I got that day pack over there. Oh, what's in? Oh, yeah, the tent's in that pack. Okay, so I got a tent. Zone of assessment number 3. What's further afield? Oh, you know what? I remember we passed a cabin like a half a mile up the river. There was a cabin. And if I walk due east, I have to hit the highway. So why I just did that little exercise for you is this. In 30 seconds, I discovered that I have a snapped ankle. I have power bars on me. I'm appropriately dressed. I don't have a canoe, but I have a backpack with a tent. There's a cabin upstream, and I can walk due east of the highway. Now I have all that information. Now I can make a decision. Proactive decision based on information that's in my brain now. But if you don't stop and calm down, and if you don't take a knee, and if you don't walk through that tiny little process, trademarked, by the way, the Survivorman zones of assessment, then you're at the mercy of your fear and your panic and your inexperience. You're at the mercy of everything. But that's it, man. That's how I like to answer that question. I know it's a little, geeky, but it's very pragmatic. And if anything, I'm a pragmatic individual, which I think you need to be for survival.
Nope. I'll take the geeky Les answer all day, every day. Cause I really, and it was for my own selfishness of wanting to know the answer to that. Cause it's like, I'll put myself in imaginary situations. I'm sure everybody has, if they want to know what maybe they could do in survival, but I'm like, what about the psychology of being alone? And that, cause again, you hear about people who give up, and then that's where they're found as bones. And I'm like, wow. So there has to be some like mental understanding when you're faced with, situations like that of this is what I got. So that's great. That was worth its weight.
Well, and I think that's the beauty of this Survivorman VR and this whole project with Andrew and I, is we've allowed ourselves to nerd out. If you go on a hike with me in the woods, or I go on a hike with even my wife, every once in a while, I'll go, hey, okay, if I nerd out just for that. She'll go, oh, I love when you nerd out. And then we'll be snowshoeing in Crater Lake in Oregon. And I'll go, okay, if we had to spend the night, where would you build your shelter? So no matter how far away I get from being Survivorman and I'm on stage rocking out with Slash, or down in wherever, playing rock concerts, doing that, or writing. I can't really ever truly get away from being Survivorman. I like the nerding out. I like the geeking out on the stuff that I know. And Andrew and his team were nerding out and geeking out on how they created the technology and worked with this simulation. So together we are doing what we're doing, and we're hoping for the reaction you guys are giving us, that'll spur us on to do more, continue nerding out.
I love the relationship.
Yeah, like I said,
that's going on.
The chemistry's there. Yeah. There's the respect on both ends.
Past experiences there. Yeah, so that can just carry over.
Well, we're engaged now, Andrew and I too.
So. You're moving to Toronto, right? No.
Yeah. Long distance relationship we have, and
That's funny. But thank you so much for both of you taking the time to do this. Like you said, we've been hyped since we saw Survivorman VR.
We're going back a couple of years on IG.
Yeah, maybe 2021.
I think I was like the 20-something.
Sorry it took so long.
No,
you know what?
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience. Everybody's been really patient. Like, when are we going to see it? When are we going to see it? But great things take time.
Yeah, no, I agree. You can't rush greatness. Mm-hmm. I've heard people say before. So, but every now and then we'd try to be like, what's going on with Survivor? And then I'd see like a new post on IG or something of person in the full suit. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going deep on this one. So I'm not upset about having to wait. I get how the process works.
Yeah. I'd rather wait a little extra, but it fits the vision of what's being, set out to do versus, oh, we met a deadline and boom, this is what you got. No, I'd rather it be wait a little longer, but it's freaking good.
Yeah, so I would encourage
and it's just getting better too. It's a living entity. We've got updates coming too. So,
well, thanks very much for having us on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it was a blast. Like I said, this one was a little bit selfish. Oftentimes we'll do episodes and we'll go, oh, the listeners will really enjoy that one. For this one was just
this was
for
pure,
us. Yeah,
pure us.
Yeah,
never we share with the listeners.
Yeah, we've been doing the podcast like 2.5 years now. I don't think we would have thought we'd be talking to Les Stroud via a VR podcast. So it's funny the way that life goes, but I'm happy. So thank you both for coming in and talking with us. For the listeners, if you haven't yet, you're a fan of the show, you're going to love it. Go check out Survivorman VR. And if you're not a fan of the show, you've never watched it, hell, go learn a couple of good survival tips. Yeah. But then you should probably go watch the show too, because it's a great freaking show. So other than that, thank you everyone for listening. Subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and we'll check you out later this week.
Take care.
Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.